All right, Galatians, who's the man? That's what we're going to take a look at today. Let's go.
You are watching the Beyond Sunday podcast.
All right, everybody. Going in, we just finished up last time, Paul talking about the fact that there's only one gospel. This time, we're going to throw down some credentials. Again, Paul's going to be setting up the argument that says, I'm asking you to do something. He's going to be in conflict with somebody here real shortly because there are people who we know there's apparently some different gospel on the scene in the Galatian area. Paul says, okay, guys, I need to bring it in and tell you, here's the real deal. So before he even gets to it, like we talked last time, this is why he's so masterful at this. I'm going to lay down everything up front. I'm going to build this great foundation, and I'm going to set up some things. You're going to go, it seems like that guy's right. Now we're going to talk about the real issue. So today, still setting some more stuff up. Paul's laying down his credentials. This is how we know we can listen and trust him. And so in my study Bible again, we're in the section Call to Apostleship in chapter 1. Let's dive in. Here we go. But I make known to you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached by me is not according to man. I didn't make this stuff up, by the way. For I neither received it from man, nor was I taught it, but it came through the revelation of Jesus Christ. That is huge. We're going to get back to that here in a minute. For you have heard of my former conduct in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of God beyond measure and tried to destroy it. And I advanced in Judaism beyond many of my contemporaries in my own nation, being more exceedingly zealous for the traditions. Hold on to that word right there, because that word is going to be huge when we get to the argument. So guy knows what he's doing. He's laying down this ground already. But being more exceedingly jealous for the traditions of my fathers. But when it pleased God, who separated me from my mother's womb and called me through his grace to reveal his Son in me, that I might preach him among the Gentiles. I did not immediately confer with flesh and blood, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me. But I went to Arabia and returned again to Damascus. Boom. There we go. That's the end of the section there that we're going to be covering for today. So let's dive in. What's Paul got going on here? Before we do that, let me just say this parenthetically. I really hope that this is going to really help all of us as followers of Christ just to be able to unpack the word for our own lives. Again, this isn't for theologians, deep scholars. This is for us to just live our life. We're not going to be doing doctrinal things or anything else. And my hope is that, in all honesty, if we're going through this will be a great thing for somebody who maybe isn't a follower of Christ, is just wondering and curious because they hear things from us, but maybe they've never read the Bible or heard about it. So maybe this is something, that we can be sharing with some folks so that they can actually share this with friends and really figure out what the Bible says. So anyway, parenthetical aside, that's my pastoral thing coming out. Sorry about that, but here we go. Here's the word. So I love the fact that Paul, diving right in, says that I'm going to let you know that the gospel, the thing you heard from me before. So he's already said previously, there's a new thing that's snuck in, y'all, not the thing I taught you. So he hasn't told us yet. Man, he is just teasing this out, not telling us what the problem is. But he goes, there's two things conflicting. There's what I told you and this new thing that you're doing. So that's going to be the challenge. That's the part I'm going to have to address. But here's the deal. My thing, I didn't make that up. I didn't say it. What I told you came directly from Jesus. So that is huge, because if Zach and I are sitting here doing our normal podcast and we're talking back and forth and we've got some competing ideas and things like that, we could wrestle around and, you may even come to the point where you go, yeah, I hear you, agree to disagree, moving on. Or, hey, I'm going to do my own life. Or you could say the thing I hate the most, you do you. Such a horrible phrase. Don't even get me started on that. But because we're both appealing to our own personal opinions, our preferences, our best thinking and ideas, you go, hey, there's some room to wrestle around with this. I'm cool with this. Let's go. But Paul, before we even dive in, says, hey, by the way, the thing I taught you before, because I'm going to trust in that, and that's what I'm going to try and bring you back to, that's not my idea. That came directly from Jesus. Then Paul starts diving in. He starts laying out this thing about his past, and we may go, why are we doing that, man? What? I don't need to know about your thing. You're trying to tell me I'm wrong about some stuff. Why do I need to know about where you went to school and how you acted and you were a bit wild and crazy and all these sorts of things in the past? Why do I care about this? This is essential. So a little bit of a spoiler, the thing that's going to be coming up, the thing that's causing the division is going to be about tradition. So because Paul knows that it's a old law sort of thing, kind of a piece of Judaism that is being held on to, that's being kind of carried forward, Paul doesn't want somebody to think, oh, well, you're the Johnny-come-lately. I've got some guys from the old faith, from Judaism. They know the real stuff. They've got the original OG stuff from God. And so, why would I not listen to these guys? They know all the God stuff. Paul goes, oh, these guys are really good with the old God stuff. Got it. Yeah. Well, let me fix that for you. Okay, so here's the deal. You may have heard that I actually was so deep into the original God stuff that the people of Jesus, I hunted them down. I chased after them. I did everything to destroy them. I was so deep into the original God stuff that I did not want to believe this good news and this grace because I believed in all the rules and everything else. And he says, I advanced in Judaism. So in the faith, in the original God stuff, I went beyond many of the people that were inside of the faith community. People in my class, I was like valedictorian in my class, kind of. I was really wicked smart. He's that kid that, when your grade point average, it goes on like the 4.0 scale. He's the guy that somehow graduated 4.2. And you go, what kind of extra credit did you pull off to graduate a 4.2, bro? That's Paul. He's saying, hey, I exceeded beyond my own contemporaries. I was, and that's why I paused at that one sentence when we hit it. I was exceedingly zealous. He goes, man, I was ate up about this stuff. I was on point about this. Anything about the traditions, there's that clue for us, the traditions of my family, of the people of God, any of those things about the law, I was all over that. So he's sitting there and saying that if you are listening to somebody because they're saying, hey, by the way, we know the old God stuff, and the old God stuff has some new stuff added in. He goes, yeah, that's not surprising to me, by the way. That's the school I went to. That's how I learned this stuff. And as a person who has their, master's degree from that exact same school, so to speak, I can tell you, I know exactly what they're talking about. I was all over that. I was really into all of those things. So yeah, I know exactly what they're talking about, and we can discuss that. So that's why he's laying this out. It seems like this aside, and you go, Paul, what's up with that? But all of this is connected. All of this is going to play out. He's laying out this masterful argument before we even dive into, what the heck, Paul? What's the deal? So that's where he's starting. But then he starts diving into, more about who he is, and Paul starts talking about his calling. He says something great, but he says in verse 15, but when it pleased God, who separated me from my mother's womb and called me through his grace. So he's reminding us of something that we see, again, in the Old Testament. Paul's making a great reference back to the Old Testament. When God says to the prophet, he says, I knew you in your mother's womb. And so Paul's like, so it pleased God that he actually allowed me to be born, and he knew who I was. He had a plan for me, and I was called by his grace. So again, Paul has already told us, by the way, I was zealous. I really know all the original stuff. I'm really smart about all these things, but how did I get here? I was called by God's grace. God, in his mercy, in his love, and in his kindness, he brought me to this place. I didn't earn this place. And he lets us know, Paul says that, hey, I was set aside for the Gentiles. I was specifically called to come and share and bring ministry to you. It's a specific ministry, as we can expect. It has this calling, it has this place. And here we have this guy. And again, this is going to be an important piece because of the details coming up. So again, just kind of hold these things in your thought. And that's one of the important things as we read through Scripture. A lot of times, if you do it devotional style or you hear it in a sermon, we're just going to hear like a sentence. And a lot of times we hear these as these fragmented pieces that come out. And those fragmented pieces will make us go, oh, okay, I guess that's the thing. But it's all connected. Remember, this is a guy sitting down, writing a letter. So as he's writing, his brain's going, he's got a train of thought, God's inspiring him, he's writing this along, and all these thoughts are connecting together. And so he's telling us, hey, I am this guy who is a zealous Jewish man, and I'm preaching to the Gentiles. Because there's going to be some Jewish things, some old traditions that are coming up. So he really wants you to know, I understand all of this, and this is important. But I specifically, being a zealous Jewish guy, I'm coming to preach all this stuff to you. And this is one of these little, wait, what? Sort of things that happens inside of this little intro piece that gives a clue into Paul's life. He says when he was reached by God, when God speaks to him. And so if we look in the book of Acts, we can see that over in the book of Acts, Paul is going on the road to Damascus, and he's going along, and all of a sudden, bam, he has this encounter with God. God shows up, flash of light, lays Paul out. He goes blind. It's this big, big moment. And, that's Paul's moment of calling to God. And Paul tells us right here this really cool aside, because we get this moment when Paul discovers Jesus and he ends up being healed, but then it kind of fast forwards and does some stuff. But Paul says, oh, by the way, once I received my calling and I knew what I was supposed to do, I didn't go talk with the other guys. And you go, wait, what? You didn't go talk with the other guys? Yeah, I didn't go talk to the other apostles. He's talking about Peter, John, James, the other guys that are hanging out and chilling in Jerusalem, kind of starting the church, the same people he had been persecuting. And so he did not go, and this is important, he did not go and sit at their feet and go, hey, I had a big encounter with God. Like, I was called in a big way, flash of light, blind, huge deal. So hit me into the Jesus thing now. Just, spill it. And, like Peter didn't sit there and give him the whole download, like, hey, I followed him for 3 years. Here's the deal. Paul says, hang on. I went away to Arabia. Wait, what? He says that instead of going, I actually stopped. I took off and I went and hung out away from all of them. And it kind of reminds me, if you go all the way back into the book of 1 Kings, Elijah, the prophet, comes up. God gives him this big moment. He goes, hey, go tell Ahab it's not going to rain for 3 years. And so Elijah does it. Turns out that's going to make you wildly unpopular if you tell somebody that a drought is coming. And so God told him to book it out of town, sends him across the Jordan River, and he hangs out for quite a while, somewhere close, we don't know exactly, but about 3 years, hanging out in the Kerith Ravine over in the desert, and he's just trusting in God, and God is preparing him. He's doing some stuff with him. And Paul says, it's kind of like that for me. God sent me over to the side. And that's why when he says, hey, by the way, I didn't receive the gospel from men. Okay, you didn't receive it from a guy. Where'd you get it from? From Jesus. Like literally directly from him. So the other apostles got to walk and talk with Jesus for 3 years during his earthly ministry. Paul says, I went and got a download from him in the desert. Man, wouldn't we like to know what that was about? Like, did Jesus show back up? Was it just the Holy Spirit just jamming with him for a while? Don't know. Paul really holds some of these really deeply moving parts of his life sacred and holds on to them, doesn't brag about those. And so, but he does tell us, hey, I took off. So he says, when I talk the gospel, this isn't like second and third hand. I had to learn from other guys and it kind of gets diluted. No. I got the original download from the source, from God. So just like Peter, John, James, any of those guys, I've got the exact same download. And so Paul, if we go back into the book of Acts, the thing that we do see as a connection is that Paul escapes from Damascus, and then he goes out into the desert before he ever goes to Jerusalem. So you can flip back over into Acts and you can take a look. And that's one of the things we'll see in this story is this connects over to the book of Acts. We see some overlay there. So you can go back, see that that's happening. But Paul tells us about how that was happening from his own perspective right here. So there you go. That brings us to the end of that section for today. So we're going to bookmark it right here as we see Paul announcing his call to apostleship as he continues to lay out the argument. And then next time we're going to be talking about when he did go up to Jerusalem. But we'll take care of that next time.
This has been another episode of the Beyond Sunday podcast. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe.